YouTube captions should be available.
For the new player guide. For
So
new
this
players
was
that are
from a
new
year ago.
to Honkai. First things first, I'm going to be linking a bunch.
Should you? Okay.
They always have on their minds is, should you reroll in this game? Well, rerolling in this game kind of sucks. It takes about 30 to 40 minutes to get about 10 rolls.
Fragile, what was the updated thing? It's like 15 minutes now. It's like 15 minutes to reroll, 15 to 20 minutes now. So if you want to reroll, this is the character that you want to reroll for from the starter banner. This chart is definitely outdated. Disregard this. You could go by Marissa's tier list, but we advise against tier lists here because if you missed an old battle suit, you kind of just don't go back. 25. Well, this is. Oh, hold on. Do all your starter stuff. I think most of this has changed, right? Most of this has changed. If anything has crystal rewards on it, it doesn't cost too much stamina. You should go ahead and do it. Yeah, I figured it's well, you know what? That's also another side project that we could do this weekend or next week is I gotta roll an alt account anyways. We might as well go through the new player experience. Could do that one on YouTube and rebroadcast it to the Fenris version too. It's so much nicer. Oh, that's good to hear. I think the cheap gear.
So what gear do you put on your Valkyries? Generally speaking, for the new players, I would just say use 3-star Stigmata until you know what you're doing.
I feel like 3-star Stigmata that you probably get a lot of early on is a safe way to prevent wasting too many resources. Like just using the generic gear. Oh, but what do you get now for new players? You have access to like G2 stuff, right? Okay, well, if you get access to G2 and it doesn't cost crazy amounts, then that's super good. Yeah, nobody has Mithril anymore. Mithril doesn't exist anymore. Do not level these skills also doesn't make sense anymore because all the characters that he says don't level these skills don't get used anymore. Damn, how long ago? This is from 2021. Where is the 5.6 guide? Hey, look, it's my comment from a year ago. Here's the one from 5.6, and this one is already kind of outdated. Yeah, the investment guide. Okay.
Baseline for. It's been a long time since I've talked about the absolute state.
Did he have a tier
we'll talk
list?
about fervent tempo in.
I like this tier list because it's like, at least it provides use cases and not rating them on an arbitrary scale, right? But even this is super outdated. I wouldn't say super outdated. I think a lot of the battle suits end up in the old meta and Elysian Realm tier. So this would be your stamina potions part, right? Did he have one for SP battle suits? So hold on. This would be Keeb 3? Keeb 2? Okay, Keeb 2. Time for make a tier list and make a tier list and then invite Marissa to react to it. Marissa, Fragile, and Nefer, I want you all to roast my tier list. Okay, then he says
Invested. So running at the top of our list here, we have the two Fu Huas with a major focus on their weapons. So the nebulous weapon is actually used on both, so do try and get that one first. Anyway, if you thought the rest of this chart would be filled out, you'd be wrong. You literally cannot rank anything past this point. Anyone who's played this game long enough knows how hard it is to actually give a good recommendation after these two. From here, you'll actually have to decide what kind of team you want to make. For right now, in Honkai, we have 4 major teams.
This is very important for everybody
the Ice
watching.
Team, the Lightning Team, and the Physical Team. Personally, I recommend focusing in on one specific team at a time, otherwise you will get overwhelmed. Basically, what I'm trying to say is stop chasing every new Valkyrie and just focus in on fully gearing one team.
Class, pay attention now. What did Keebster say? I want to play it back.
One specific take. For right now, in Honkai, we have 4 major teams, which are the Fire Team, the Ice Team, the Lightning Team, and the Physical Team. Personally, I recommend focusing in on one specific team at a time, otherwise you will get overwhelmed. Basically, what I'm trying to say is stop chasing every new Valkyrie and just focus in on fully gearing one team. That's probably the best idea. And of course, which of the 4 teams should you start building first? And is there anything you should consider going out of your way for? Well, most people would actually point you at this point to the newest Hearster. However, right now is actually...
It is kind of funny. We did get a lot of crazy supports right now in 2022.
A terrible time to do that. Hearster bias is a real thing in this game, and let me just explain it a bit. Usually in about July or August, we always get a new Hearster. Now, the Hearster is always the top of their respective team for the entire year, which is actually way longer than most Valkyries these days. So for longevity reasons, it's actually a very smart idea to go for the Hearster of the year.
Yeah, so I feel like this year is kind of an exception, right? Because of how much support power creep we've had.
Since 2019, they've been designed to be very universally used.
And also, Flame Scion didn't get shielded as much. I feel like for mid-budget players, though, Hearster of Thunder, this year was kind of like Hearster of Thunder year 2.0 after 7 Thunders happened. PE was kind of the Hearster of the year. Yeah, that's true.
Which means they're helpful in pretty much all game modes, and they're pretty much recommended for players of all spending levels as well. However, as a caveat, it seems that mihoyo does know this, and it seems that their weather will come up the least in Abyss. At least that's what I've noticed so far. And
that part is also kind of true, because it was like 6.0, I feel like we only had like 1 or 2... I don't know. Having H2O has been kind of handy.
Game players can definitely take note of that. The general player prediction is that the new Hearster will be in version 5.9.
That didn't hold up well. mihoyo definitely saw the predictions and they were like, haha, just kidding, we're gonna...
Which is about 2 patches away. Of course, that could be wrong. Anything could happen and they could break the pattern. Let's talk about something that's not a Hearster. Let me tell you about something that actually separates the pros from the Joes.
This is also one of my favorite pictures. You guys can't see this. Let me minimize this so you can see the picture here, and then turn off the subtitles. This is me. I'm a Joe, and then this is Nephra and Fragile. They're the pros, okay? Turn the subtitles back on.
And of course, that is the SP equipment banner.
This is important.
If you don't really know what to pull on, this is pretty much always going to be a good thing for your account. This banner comes out with new A-rank supports, though we won't count Eden since hers is farmable. One of the best ways to power spike a specific team is to get the A-rank support.
J-Nero cameo.
Support gear. This is support impacts 3rd after all. Most of the power of teams is actually the support.
Turgenev.
Stigmata. DPS Stigmata is fairly minor in comparison. The banner itself also has the best rates in the game, so you'll always complete the set much sooner than any other banner. This should not deter you from actually finishing a team, though. This is just a good starting point. Basically, always keep your eye out on those banners with a 30 drop guarantee. Those are always a very good starting point to building a team. Speaking of teams, let's start talking about the teams one by one. First off, we have the physical teams. The physical teams are, of course, led by the Hearster of Sentience, but then we have our supports. So for our physical supports, we have...
So this part's a little bit old. Nowadays, we would say Griseo with Carol.
Have two major ones, which are Carol Pepper and Starlit Astrologos. So between the two of these, it's become apparent to me that Carol is the much stronger option. In most cases, Carol just outperforms, and sometimes she doesn't even really need her gear to do that. And for certain bosses, the difference between the two is actually massive. The reason for that may be because of the shield breaking capabilities from Carol, or just because of the fact that Starlit Astrologos takes a long time to farm SP.
Yeah, don't worry about Starlit Astrologos now if you're a new player.
Though Starlit Astrologos may actually perform better earlier on. This is because Carol actually provides no crit rate to the team. You have a lot of access to crit rate in the end game, but in the early game, your crit rate is just dog water. Older damage dealers actually have less crit rate, so Starlit Astrologos actually does have some use in the end game as well. And nowadays, the Shuijing set is now not worth pursuing anymore. Still a very good Stigmata set, but not worth using your crystals on. Depending on your situation, you may want to farm both, but do be careful. So of course, after the two physical supports, we have the many physical DPSs to talk about. Of course, the cheapest and most cost-effective damage dealer is the Herrscher Sentience, which we've talked about before. In that case, you'd use a triple support team with both Carol and Starlit Astrologos.
Nowadays, you would run Griseo in place of Starlit Astrologos for the triple support team.
Effective, but will lag behind any boss that's not a psychic. Still good enough for the average player, though. But of course, we have very many physical damage dealers, so let's talk about them one by one. So starting off, we can talk about Alicia. Now, Alicia is the strongest physical range psychic damage dealer. Yes, I know that's a lot of qualifiers. Alicia's roles are incredibly unique, and because of that, her bosses are pretty much uncontested.
She's actually turned out to be a really good second option in a few fights lately, right? Like, just because of her raw output, especially now coupled with Griseo in the team.
Because her Stigmata is farmable, it's actually quite easy to fully gear her. The biggest problem really is I don't really suggest pulling for the bow. It's much better to obtain it through something like a battle pass or something, because the Stigmata are...
Yeah, and that's kind of why I didn't have the bow on my alt account for a long time, was because I needed to wait for a way where I could just target the bow by itself. So in my case, it was the 6.0 mini spending event.
Farmable, it can be a waste, and although her damage is really high, I don't think she'll have favored boss treatment for the future. Basically, to sum it up, her bow is not a must pull, but if you can get it affordably, she's definitely worth raising, and you could actually prepare for that if you want. Next, we have Equinox, which is the newest Valkyrie in the game. She is the only imaginary S rank in the entire game, and I'm willing to bet that's probably going to stay true for a long time. The problem with it is that her advantage on imaginary bosses is kind of extreme. But if we want to talk about her actual DPS, it's pretty much in line with most of the other physical damage dealers, so she will actually lose on other physical weathers, but definitely her biggest selling point is her ability to do imaginary bosses. I think for right now, just because of that selling point, she is the go-to physical DPS. We don't really have a good alternative like we did with Quantum a long time ago. It is worth noting that on top of being very good on imaginary bosses, she's actually very strong in general in Memorial Arena. She's very quick burst damage, which is very good for the mode. Now let's talk about Bright Knight, who is the oldest gacha DPS.
If you're a new player, you do not build Bright Knight unless you absolutely she is your favorite character and you're willing to be very patient for all the equipment and support gear that she needs.
That is viable in Abyss. So as of right now, we have had a lot of events where we've more easily been able to rank her up or just obtain her straight up. If you haven't gotten her already, investing crystals into the Valkyrie supply is probably not the best idea. She also is in close competition with Twilight Paladin, who is farmable, but Bright Knight has a quicker path to viability depending on the deals that you're offered. So if you're able to get the Abyss Flower, you can actually use her and actually skip the investment on Twilight Paladin, and she'll be sufficient for most players at just S rank. Otherwise, older players can compete with their Twilight Paladin. Just keep in mind that her bosses might not show up that often. And that is all of the physical damage dealers. You might have noticed that all of them are within their own niche, and that is definitely on purpose. For right now, we'll say that Equinox is the favored choice since she is the most recent. She also has the largest advantage in her niche. Next, let's talk about Fire.
So Twilight Paladin is really old meta. If you've hung around this chat long enough, the current advice is you just build Carol Pepper as your physical mech DPS. She just takes the least amount of investment to get working.
Fire Team cements as your
TP is more fun, but if you're a newer player and you missed out on getting her weapon, it might be less fun. Because there's a old way to, you have to learn the old way where you have to like pre-farm your bar and all this. It's fun if you have her weapon pri-armed, because the weapon, the new version, the upgraded version of the weapon solves a lot of the older design and modernizes it a little bit.
Your Imperia as the baseline, but then we have the two supports, which are Rondo and Raven.
Rondo is basically not used anymore, except for maybe on Rhymestar, but I-Chan coming in 6.2 will replace Rondo.
Now, the situation between these two is actually fairly unique. First, Rondo can actually be preferred due to her ability to ignite,
which I-Chan will be the new solution,
as well as her high hit count that can be effective on the Rhymestar shield. In contrast, Raven is a lot harder to play, but with her on the team, the damage is significantly higher.
And you've heard Fragile complain about people not wanting to learn how to play Raven, but Raven actually has insane multipliers.
However, the reality of the situation is Raven is significantly more expensive than Rondo.
At the time of this posting, this was kind of true for older, or it was kind of true if you were old enough of a player to have the gear.
Rondo is basically completely free, and on top of that, she is very easy to play.
Right. This was, the assumption was that you had the cross. If you didn't have the cross, I wouldn't say it's worthwhile going back for the cross. And you can see here, let me turn off the subtitles. You can see here, what is this gear? It's the gear that we've been talking about. Turgenev top and bottom. Depending on when you started, you might have gotten access to full Ozlog, but not Turgenev. The cross is farmable, but it's a long farm. It is a long farm. And it is terrible at low levels. Yeah. Imagine sinking 400 Taurus that you could put towards a newer Priarm into the old Priarm just to not use her. You still need the base cross. At least level to 50 for max Divine Key stuff, but I would not recommend upgrading it into the Priarm form anymore.
It makes sense for the majority of the players.
And see here, keep in mind, Rondo only works for 80 plus. Because pre 80 plus, you might just be doing Ranger's Cross. While Raven is much stronger, I am unsure of her long-term longevity. Well, Raven almost made it a year. Almost. Pardo definitely just... I mean, realistically, though, Pardo only took her spot on, what, 2.5 fights? Argent Knight and Type Counter Kasumi. Versus Tank, you still needed to run Raven. And for Vilv, you still had to run Raven. So... it wasn't a total wash. It wasn't a total wash.
Player base to use Rondo while cutting costs. My general recommendation is just to use Rondo until you feel like your fire team is too weak to retain, then Raven can be a good investment. The other thing to keep in mind is that Rondo only works with her pre-arm, which is available after level 80, so before then you pretty much only have Raven as an option.
That being said, new Masters players will get access to Priarms at in 6.2, but I still wouldn't recommend for those players to upgrade the cross. I mean, well, if they're campers and they're sitting on bajillion amount of Taurus anyways, okay, maybe. But if you're not camping in Masters, don't upgrade that cross.
Sums up our discussion on the fire supports. Let's talk about the damage dealers next. First, we have the Hersher Flame Scion.
That's also a great point. The problem is that fire weathers are so rare, so when the ones where she is replaced are the most frequently ran ones, it looks a lot worse than it actually is. Yeah. Yeah, we had like at least 2 to 3 Argent Knight cycles, right? After Turd Cat was figured out. I remember those because that's kind of when Sakurama and I had that rivalry going on, the fun rivalry on Sundays. But we did have at least 1 or 2 instances of Fire Tank. I remember that too. Within like 5.7 to 5.9, we did have at least 2 instances. It wasn't that often, right? I think the first cycle we were still using Raven because Turd Cat wasn't fully figured out. I remember using Turd Cat at least twice. Was it twice per patch, really? Was it really that often? I only really remember doing Turd Cat with Spina like a total of 2, maybe 3 times. Huh. Man, my memory's really fuzzy. I do remember the type counter Kasumi though, because I remember you were trying to explain to me the process and the rotation for it, and I was struggling because I kept getting really bad RNG on the mobs at the start. Yeah, yeah, I remember you talking about skipping the Spina gear too.
Definitely a fan favorite, but not a must-have like some would have you believe. She definitely has the highest fire DPS in the game. She also has very high memorial demand. Now the problem with her is she actually has no ability to ignite, and Raven also has no ability to ignite.
So the lack of ability to ignite really only affected the ignite weather. And in my experience, I think it was one of my last Red Lotus runs on the main account was Parvati, right? We had one Ignite Parvati. I think it was at the beginning. It might have been in 5.5. But I had the recording. I was able to get 700 because I ran Raven instead of Sakano Rondo. But it was kind of like one of those, like... It was kind of premium. It was pretty luxury because I was relying on AE for the initial Ignite. And I would delay my Elf ult for the Ignite refresh. Oh, this must have been in 5.6 because it was right after the trauma change. I remember because the basic attacks from Flame Siren was applying small rhyme trauma.
What ends up happening is because there is a
it was Red
weather
Lotus
for
anyways.
Igniting, she ends up losing that weather to other fire damage dealers, but still her damage is very high, and with a well-built team she can be used in a variety of different weathers, so she is the primary selection for your fire damage DPS. Next, let's talk about the new Rita. Now the new Rita is actually given out for free in version 5.5, and actually her damage is very respectable. It is on par with all of the other Valkyries in the game. The main thing that holds her back is she doesn't really have many bosses that she is the best on. Unlike most new Valkyries.
Yeah, when Rita released, she was really good because of the wide coverage. Like, if you didn't have Mobius, if you didn't have this or that, if you didn't have Flame Scion, and you didn't have Mobius, well then Spina just provides coverage. But it looks really weird when they start running like Ignite Argent Knight over and over again.
She didn't actually get any new bosses made for her, and I am not sure if that will ever change. However, that doesn't really stop her from having very good damage, on top of the fact that she actually does have some bosses that she is the best in. She's essentially a meta unit that was given out for free. The biggest problem with her is she's obviously meant to be a version 5.5 Valkyrie with the deals that were offered. If you already skipped the insane deal in version 5.5, let's be real, you're probably not going to pull on it later. But even with free gear, maybe she is a decent copium option in Red Lotus and below. And because she's very clearly meant to be a free option, she's very likely going to be more obtainable, likely more deals in the future. Next, we have Dea Ancora, who is the newest Valkyrie without time stop, which at this point is kind of ancient, but she is still holding her weight. Now, a lot of that is because of her ability to ignite, which actually comes from her top stigmata, not her actual kit. And take special
which was
note
a
of that
weird
because
decision.
That is basically the reason why she's able to use Raven and not just skip out on Rondo. Her damage is actually falling behind, and she is slowly losing bosses, but they did just give her another one in Memorial Arena. It's likely that the status quo will actually remain for about 3 to 5 months, so she's still going to be good for that period of time. And
yeah, so Parvati, nowadays, if you have the gear for it, you can just skip all the mechanics and run Hersher of Thunder.
the reason why is because I don't see them going crazy with new fire damage dealers until about August or a bit after that. So definitely not recommended.
Yeah, Spina also was great for Doom. Well, let's be honest though. At the time of this posting, he said 3 to 5 months, right? So in the end, it was within that time window. So this was in 5.6. The next time when Hersher of Thunder stole Parvati would have been last patch, right? Hopefully iChan will change that.
For any new players, but a consideration for any Dolphins out there. And that pretty much finishes all the
And yeah, if you were a paying player in the last 4 patches, Dea Ancora was an option if you wanted her, if you were willing to spend, because she was in the battle pass, but you basically needed at least Knight, if not Paladin battle pass to do so.
fire.
I want to see my Dea Ancora pulls. Where's Kronos? Kronos dared me to do one pull on the ADV banner, and we got her. That was so dumb. Then Kronos came back and cursed me for the H2O gear.
Fire team lineups. Overall, not too complicated, and I don't think it'll change too much in the next few months, but I could be wrong. Moving on from fire teams, we can talk about lightning teams. Now, very much like fire teams, we can use Azure Imperia as the baseline for lightning teams, but keep in mind this is only true for Abyss, and the easier content you're fighting, the less true this becomes. In more squishy content, you may prefer to use both of the lightning supports, which we will talk about right now.
And this was before Eden, right? This was right before Eden was introduced, and this was before the tech was discovered that Eden with Turgenev and with Seven Thunders became the most cracked out things. I feel like right now, with the current state of the game, Ice and Lightning are probably the 2 easiest to build just because of the availability of farmable units.
So the 2 lightning supports are Official and Fallen Rosemary. Comparing these 2,
oh
is
yeah,
because
I think at this point he did have some
beta I feel like
beta
I have the
info.
most nuanced knowledge on this topic. Rosemary is only a little bit better in speed and SP regeneration. Those 2 aspects are actually very important for her because she is able to punch above her weight. Official, on the other hand, gives you much more damage per rotation, which is very important sometimes. There's also the fact that Fallen Rosemary is much more difficult to play, so the perceived gap between the 2 is going to be very large. But keep in mind, most of the advantage is due to the Zen Yi stigmata, so you definitely need that at least, otherwise Rosemary is going to outperform in proper hands. So in general, the stronger investment option is definitely going to be Official if you get the Zen Yi stigmata. Rosemary will continue to find niche use, as well as the Lobster boss, which doesn't show up that much. Of course, it's worth discussing Eden since she is the new lightning support. In fact, there's not much to worry about with this character, and here is why. I can't predict the future, but I will give you 2 scenarios that are likely to play out. We have one universe where Eden is really good, and she's the next best lightning support. In this case, lightning teams would become extremely easy to build and very cost effective. Alternatively, we have universe 2 where she underperforms all the other supports, and she's almost certainly going to outperform with her intended partner.
I like universe 1. We live in universe 1, everybody. We live in universe 1. We live in universe 1.
Which is Aponia. And to be honest, it doesn't actually matter which universe we live in. If you're playing on a budget, you should be skipping the guns. Typically, support weapons aren't.
However, in hindsight, and I couldn't even tell this at the time, I kind of agreed with him at the time because we didn't know how she was going to play. In hindsight, if I could go back, I would. If I could go back, if Keebster could go back, we would both have been like, get the guns. In this case, the pistols were just too damn important.
Aren't as important as the stigmata that they come with, and because of that, there is no slick deal.
Also, at the time, the Turgenev tech wasn't discovered, right? And Seven Thunders didn't
The
exist.
chase this time around. Okay.
So it was kind of a 2-patch thing that we eventually trended towards. So Seven Thunders, well, one was Seven Thunders, one was Turgenev with the pistols. The pistols, again, I've said it before on the channel. It just comes down to the fact that they front loaded too many of her bonuses into the pistols, where you basically don't have to even play her. You don't have to ult because the ult doesn't do enough in terms of pure damage multipliers. The ult is good for utility because you want the SP regen. The combo system was too complicated, and the weapons just let you skip the combo system. Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty much all I have to say about the current supports. The damage dealers are actually less complicated. The Herrscher of Thunder is now what I would consider to be a budget Valkyrie.
I would consider the fact that she is kind of budget, but to maximize her potential, you do want 7 Thunders. So 7 Thunders is kind of like mid-budget, but it's also primo in the sense that it's new and you do need to put crystals towards it. In 6.2, pay attention, chat. 6.2, we will get a free Herrscher of Thunder if you show up and play the game. So if you don't have Herrscher of Thunder and you're like, well, Raiden Mei, HOT, yes, she is very hot. Or I started playing Honkai because of Raiden Mei, walking around in those stiletto heels, right? Those Tengu heels. Or I love Kiyome. I can't wait for their reunion. Next chapter, maybe. She will be made free in 6.2. All you gotta do is show up and play.
She's now obtainable in the Battle Pass, and honestly, I would not be surprised if we got a free copy later this year.
Keebster is a prophet.
Now, the Herrscher of Thunder, I can't even like sugarcoat it a bit. She definitely has fallen off.
This was before 7 Thunders.
However, her demand in Memorial Arena is still very high. She
That was before double triple S fights, but still.
just has very low.
After 7 Thunders and double triple S fights, her demand in Memorial Arena remained very high.
Usage. The reason for this is because a lot of her moves actually slow the Memorial clock a lot. They don't actually slow the Abyss clock. So what ends up happening is that even though we say her damage is low, she ends up being used a lot.
That still holds up, especially after 7 Thunders, because now she can stop the clock on alt and on finisher.
Despite that, and slowing down the clock like this scales really well with lower damage. To add to this, her leader skill is also still one of the best leader skills in the game, so she's still valued. Generally, since she is a budget option, I do not recommend using any crystals on her. She's really only an option for people who have already off-rated her weapon. Maybe she'll get a new weapon one day.
He foresaw.
Copium. Of course,
not Copium.
there's also Mobius to talk about. Mobius has a passive that makes her excel against a high amount of enemies. Since her release, she's basically taken all of the lightning weathers. We've seen a few times that she can...
Yeah, Mobius on release was one of the best value gacha S ranks. Everything just kind of lined up. And if you were on global, you just didn't really have a choice, right? They left their banner up for like 4 weeks. Klein Raven and Mobius for 4 weeks back in 5.2.
Can also perform outside her niche. She's very strong in Memorial as well.
She dominated basically every double S fight where you could just Lightning Empress ult.
Obviously, in 5.7, we are going to be expecting a lot more psychic bosses. That doesn't suddenly mean that Mobius becomes a lot worse, but miHoYo's treatment to her will be. And that pretty much finishes our conversation.
Less true now, but she still has Wolf, right? Wolf. She's good in as a backup option on lightning weather, most lightning weathers. You can use her on ranged weather side stages. Homu. Yeah, Bloodlust, which is the Homu weather. 4.5, right? We'll count range as like half a weather because she's only really used for the side stage. She's good on type counter weather for the side stages too. She's really good on type counter side stage. Biomech, yeah. There, she's good on the biomech guys, right? So Bloodlust is for every huge pack of enemies you kill, you get a total damage buff per stack of enemy that you killed, and that's the Homu King weather. So there's 2 stages, right? There's the first stage and the second stage. Mobius is good on both. Range weather, she's good on both of the side stages. Type counter, she's good on all 3 stages. Well, there's a couple of type counter bosses at the end. Namely Kasumi. But she's really good on that type counter tunnel. Right? Where the type counter it's like it's biomech type counter. Yeah, because there's type counter Kasumi, type counter SK, and type counter HOS. You can use Mobius as a copium solution for type counter HOS. I've done it on the past. It's not recommended, but it is available. But she's actually really good on the side stages. right? Because there's the alleyway with biomech, and then there's the tunnel with the tank at the end. There's a second one. Also, 2 types of wolf. MA and Abyss Wolf. They're kind of the same. Oh, lightning and type counter. That's right. There is type counter and lightning wolf. Yeah, I think she is the best. And then type counter, you can use Spina as a backup. Wait, let me see this one. Oh, I remember this one. Yeah, I remember this one. So this particular Bloodlust stage, I remember this one. Yeah. This was the one that, like, at the end, it was like a mob pack for the final boss, right? It was like a mob pack fight. And you were supposed to use, like, HOS with Carol. Yeah, that was a weird version of Bloodlust. We don't see it that often nowadays, but yeah, she's good there. This has appeared twice. Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, it's very rare, but she just has really good coverage. So if you're medium high budget, she may be one that you want to get just for the coverage. But
on the Lightning Valkyries,
again,
I won't be discussing the new Valkyrie for obvious reasons. She'll definitely get the best treatment from mihoyo. So obviously, if you want to build it,
turns out Aponia only was good if you. Aponia was a flop because they released Seven Thunders right after, and Seven Thunders was just more cost efficient for a lot of players. If you were a player that had hands, you could make S0 and S2 work fine. If you could get double S, then you were in the clear. Jennings quit over Aponia. Yeah, she did have too many problems. Like her combo charging took too long if she was on field. She had interesting decision making between combo first, alt second, and alt first, combo second, but she was just too reliant on having fully geared Fischl and Eden to even function fast enough. And even then, sometimes you were just rotation limited by the alt cooldown.
A Lightning team right now, then you might want to think about that patch. Lastly, of course, we have Ice teams. Now, Ice teams are the most unique. Let's just get right into it, shall we? The new Catgirl Felis is the new Ice support.
At the time of this filming.
Biggest problem with Ice teams were SP management and ultimate cooldowns. This cat definitely solves both. So Ice teams in general have become a lot better with part.
And we know now in 6.1, Ice teams are primo right now. Because now you have a wide roster. Pardo, Haxer Bunny, Jade Knight, and AE as a backup, right? So now you can rotate your Ice team roster either depending on the needs of the fight, where there's like a high hit count shield, or depending on your gear limitations. Like in my case, I'm making do with scuff gear on 2 fronts. But if you have full Turgenev, in Defy's case, you know, Haxer Bunny proved to be better mileage. There's a lot of, you know, additional context required and you know, situational things involved with deciding what to use. We can say now, generally speaking, Jade Knight with Pardo is the preferred option if you have the pieces for it.
Felis. She doesn't seem to work very well with Azure Imperia because her long animations do not have time stop, and you can't sequence the buffs to get a full duration on your main DPS, which is not a problem with Haxer Bunny. Anyway, that is besides the point. If you are looking to invest into an Ice team, the best course of action is actually to pull on the 30 guarantee that's coming up. It's pretty much going to be the only time you can get her set for cheap. Yeah, you can definitely skip it, but in that case, you're probably building another team, not the Ice team. Now let's talk about Haxer Bunny. Obviously, as of right now, used in pretty much every Ice team. Really only
This is all the gameplay Lol W.
An abyss, but very strong there. Haxor Bunny is probably the easiest Valkyrie in the entire game. In fact, if you are a casual player, you might want to get her sooner rather than later. She makes it so you don't have to do rotations at all, and basically you get free damage for elemental teams. Now that being said, that does rely on Turgenev, and Turgenev is probably the best stigmata in the entire game. It's a very strong stigmata.
We were just talking about Turgenev right now. Look at the longevity of this.
That can be used in pretty much any elemental
At the time of this recording, Turgenev was already 1 year old.
team, so a very cost-effective Valkyrie to gear up, as it'll strengthen your entire account. And that pretty much does it for the discussion on the support Valkyries.
So yeah, now as of 6.1, we have more options. We have Jade Knight. We have more DPS.
Since Turgenev is just widely desired, most veterans actually already have Haxor Bunny geared up. Likely what will separate a good and a great team is the Bastard supply that's coming up. Now let's move on to the discussion to the DPSs. First, the budget option is the Hersha Reason.
Now completely farmable, and new players get access to this for cheap. It's not entirely free, right? You get one option egg, and then you get like another deal.
She's pretty much gotten no love for an entire year, but now just recently she's gotten some buffs. So very likely in version 5.6 we'll be able to see her shine again, not only because she's been brought up by Felis, but because Huodo will likely return from his year-long slumber.
He did make at least 1 or 2 appearances, right? There was one freeze weather Huodo, and then there was one type counter Huodo, and we beat the crap out of type counter Huodo with Twilight Paladin.
So in general, HOR is basically a free Valkyrie. By doing Elysian Realm, you'll be able to get to S2 for free. That is basically her biggest damage checkpoint, so you don't even need to go higher than that.
And then double S gives you quality of life.
Also, her weapon is next to be put into the exchange shop, so really there's no reason to spend crystals on her. Her damage is pretty close to the others and will definitely be effective for Red Lotus Abyss. So Silverwing is probably the favored ice damage dealer right now.
As of this recording,
she also functions as a ranged character, so she is very effective on the ranged weather. So among all the ice damage dealers, she definitely has the highest raw damage output. So because of that, she is the premium option for the ice damage dealer. However, the difference between her and the other ice damage dealers is definitely exaggerated. On top of just having a generally easier time scoring, bosses tend to...
It was, I don't know why he chose to do that. It might have been like an older style, or he just wanted to showcase the footage of Hersha Reason doing this.
Be able to get to S2 for free. That is basically her biggest damage checkpoint, so you don't...
In an older style team, right? This is a non-Pardo run.
Also, her weapon is next...
And it might have just been older footage that he had from a previous beta test. So this is non-Pardo. Part of the idea was you wanted to preserve your weapon cooldown for actually doing damage rather than applying the trauma. Yeah, and now you just instant freeze with Pardo and just say, get out of here, you cat.
Next to be put into the exchange shop, so really there's no reason to spend crystals on her. Her damage is pretty close to the others and will definitely be effective for Red Lotus character. So highest raw damage output. So
one thing to note now is like at this point in the year, Hersha Elysia has been released, and Jade Knight is now a very functionally good, very, very good ice support.
Because of that, she is the premium option for the ice damage dealer. However, the difference between her and the other ice damage dealers is definitely exaggerated. On top of just having a generally easier time scoring, bosses tend to like her typing or just straight up her mechanics, such as Asaka's shield or Benares' flying. The other thing to keep in mind is that her memorial usage is just strictly lower than all of the other elemental.
At the time of this recording, this is pretty true. A lot of the older double S fights, if they used Silverwing at all, they used her as a support unit because of her time stop and her low ult cost. I think the Benares one, it was Lightning Empress, Silverwing, Mobius, and Silverwing was there purely to time stop ult and apply Newt and Candy and May.
Teams. So really you're only pulling her for either ice weather or the ranged weather.
As far as triple S fights go, she's mostly used as an option for Husk. Not the highest scoring option, but it's like a second smoother option, like a smooth chill run option. Does she have another triple S fight? Not really, right? Just Husk. She owns triple S Husk if you have triple S Jade Knight. So in a year, When I get my triple S Jade Knight, you'll see me run that there. But until then, I will just scuff along with Hersha Thunder and or Aponia.
Definitely something to keep in mind. Next, we have Nyx, who is the best quantum type in the game so
At the time of this filming, yes.
far. Now, that doesn't actually mean very much because we literally only have one quantum boss. Also, very similar to
We only had one quantum boss, now there's 3 new ones. Yeah, at the time it was what? Quantum Tona, Lightning Up Tona, and Coatl. Did Tona ever get a Quantum Up only version, or was it only Lightning? Only Lightning. And that was the one where you pretty much had to just do Fallen Rosemary with.
That doesn't actually mean very much because we literally only have one quantum boss.
So, I guess in this case, he must have referred to Quantum Weather Boss?
Also, very similar to Mobius, she scales on the amount of enemies that there are. And so there are times where she might actually pull ahead because of that. A few bosses are designed with multiple mobs in mind, such as Helmaru and Homu, and depending on the disturbance checkpoint, she might actually be the best option. But Nyx is probably the most questionable because she has terrible memorial coverage.
I do remember this. I do remember using IO on Lightning Tona at least once, and it was like you needed to chain the Paralyze.
And to be honest, they don't actually run her bosses very much, so I really don't think she is justified other than for people who want to retain every single weather in Nirvana
Is he talking about Styx and Nefer right now?
Abyss. And to be honest,
The joke is that they're in the same armada.
that's pretty
For
much
those
no
that
one
don't
who
know.
needs this video. And that pretty much covers our discussion of the ice teams.
Gamers only for Argent Knight. Not recommended for normal people. Yeah, Argent Knight, I remember, well, one, she's very time consuming to build if you want to build her. Two, it's not time efficient nor cost efficient to build her now. If you built her back in the day and you already have her at the prerequisite rank ups, it's fine. She had some specific animation cancels, I think, right? Well, there were quite a few people on the last Helmaru cycle before Hersha Elysia that actually placed in top 50 with Triple S Argent Knight. It's quite a few that did that, yeah. Her fragments are available in Gold Witch Orb Shop. So for a certain age player, right? Like if your account age is at a certain point and you really like her, it's reasonable to go back to build her to Triple S if she's one of your favorite characters. Yeah, yeah. So like Mimitsu, for instance, right? Very much in that category of player who favors the old school Vox. It's like every time Rhymestar comes back, I got to do at least one run with Flame Sakitama. You know?
Overall, the damage dealers are a little bit underwhelming. If you
don't... the solution for new players nowadays, if you are playing Ice Team, is just to play Support Impact.
don't have any of the damage dealers raised up, I would personally suggest for you to just wait for a new one to pop up.
Hersha Elysia popped up not long after this video, like 3 patches after this video.
Just get Turgenev, basically.
Just
so
get
Turgenev. I do
basically.
recommend finishing one type of team. That could be physical, ice, fire, or lightning.
I personally still feel like lightning is the easiest to build. But it also depends on your situation with what you pull on either the starter banner, your S rank banner, that type of thing. Wait, which image? Oh, this one. Yeah. Just Just take this. Even if you don't have AE, you can sub in, you know, Griseo. You could sub in. Who else could you put in there? Yeah. Well, Jade Knight exists, right? Jade Knight exists now. If you are too new to have enough resources to get Jade Knight, and you need ice, Pardophilus is your linchpin. Eden for the ult, so that you can regen SP, so that you could just cycle more often. Eden just randomly has 40% total damage in her kit.
But personally,
especially if you can get that paralyzed.
Suggest for you to
right? Or was the 40% TDM in addition to the paralyzed TDM?
just wait for a new one to pop up. Just get Turgenev, basically.
I need
So
to
as a
reread
reminder, I
Eden's
do
skills
recommend
at some point.
finishing one type of team. That could be physical, ice, fire, or lightning. Another reason why I strongly recommend this is because using scuffed gear is not easy. It takes a lot of skill and knowledge.
This is we've seen that today using scuff gear.
And a fully geared team can also go outside of its niche, so it can just generally be used.
We saw that today too. We were bullying the side stages with Asuka.
And you'll be much better off than if you just had fragmented pieces everywhere, not knowing what you're doing. Also, I didn't really discuss Ancient Legacy Valkyries, so let's do that.
Okay, the priority has shifted a little bit. Both depends on weapons.
Really quickly. As of right now, we don't really have very many Ancient Legacy Valkyries, so it is possible to farm both Alicia and Fallen Rosemary.
That has changed. The situation has changed on that. Nowadays, if you have HOR, there's an argument and contextual, a situational argument to be made for farming HOR. I think Jade Knight right now is the priority for most players. Fallen Rosemary makes a lot of sense for new players that don't have a modernized quantum solution.
If you can do that, I do recommend doing it. But if you can't, then I think the focus should be on Rosemary first.
I still agree with that. I definitely still agree with Rosemary. I think Nirvana, both of these. I mean, if we look at this chart, right? Not truly tier list, but just a contextual flow chart. Dorm buffs. These are definitely the lowest priority for sure. Or if you're specifically a character enthusiast.
Celestial Hymn.
I think Celestial Hymn only exists for time whales that have access to double sleeper strats, and or you're in this weird situation, this edge case where you got Celestial Hymn, kind of like Lilith's account that we reviewed today. You have Celestial Hymn, and she's unfortunately your only impair source. I don't think you farm for her though, right? You don't. I don't think Celestial Hymn is a good legacy investment anymore, even for Memorial Arena purposes. At the time of this filming, we still had 2 double S bosses, so having a second impair source made a lot of sense. Nowadays, I'd say there's enough alternatives for that double S fight in general, where if you don't already have her unlocked, you don't go out of your way to farm her. And even if you do have her unlocked, I feel like the pace of the releases do not make it favorable to farm CH anymore. Yes, if you do get CH from Dorm, she's still excellent to know how to use, at least for those double S fights.
Is fantastic for Memorial Arena. So if you do care about that, you can prioritize unlocking her. But there have been so many events where you can get her for free. So honestly, I wouldn't really worry about it.
True. I wouldn't worry about it.
And because she's not really rank dependent, it's good if you just unlock her. Okay, guys, that
True.
pretty much
So
does
true.
it. Leave any questions.
So let me go back here. The title of the chapter is "You Cannot Tier Valkyries."
Anyway, if you thought the rest of this chart would be filled out, you'd be wrong. You literally cannot rank anything past this point. Anyone who's played this game long enough knows how hard it is to actually give a good recommendation after these two. From here, you'll actually have to decide what kind of team you want to make. For right now in Honkai, we have 4 major teams, which are the Fire Team, the
Anyways,
Ice Team.
that's the end of the video. We just went through it. I actually should just cut this and we'll just post this to YouTube, I guess. So some of the early game stuff is outdated, but that was on the other video, right? I think there's a lot of stuff that he mentions here that's actually still it holds up pretty well. I would say Fervent Tempo though. Fervent Tempo is in a weird position. She can be really good as an early game carry, but I feel like new players just level too fast for her to matter. And I think he goes over Twilight Paladin. Twilight Paladin is we should rewatch this beginning part. So I feel like the farmable stuff here, I think mostly just Raven now, right? A lot of these have fallen off, but in terms of old meta can still be situationally useful. We saw Snowy Sniper get some use, but it's very specific. Blueberry Blitz usage has fallen off because Pardo replaced her need for ice trauma. Shield Break on Valkyrie Accipiter situationally used, especially if you don't have Jade Knight, if you don't have Paganini. Elysian Realm, right? Farm at your leisure. And to add to these two, well, this is stamina farming, so well, Luna Kindred is kind of stamina farming, right? Because she shows up in the open world task egg. So it's kind of stamina. I feel like most of the times in the last 2 weeks of account reviews, a lot of the A ranks have just been farm at your leisure. Even though the ones that have seen situational uses, I feel like for modern new players, the time it will take, and especially with the change in leveling, the speed at which you get to 81, it doesn't really allow you to get these old stamina farming ones online in time. Whereas the SP battle suits like Pardo, Eden, Fischl, those will go online much faster if you focus on farming them with Asterite. How fast do you get to 81 now? Within a month. You could do it in one patch now. Imagine getting CH online. Yeah. But see, that's exactly the edge case that we ran into today, right, Zored? Lilith's CH is the only CH available on that account. And all Lilith has is a 50 11th plus, which is not ideal, but that's all that's available to work with. Funny enough, though, my scuffed SS2 MPE with HS was able to clear the Nirvana side stage. So I think for Red Lotus, Lilith should be fine. And of course, Lilith does have the option to brute force the side stage with Ice Team. So
this is more to prepare you for the situation in which you might need them in the future.
Yeah, I think the situational use cases, I feel like once you finish one, you just pick a direction and go until they're all triple S. Because what else are you going to spend farming AE Imaginons? Maybe.
4th row here, which are the old meta Valkyries, can be used as damage dealers for when...
I still feel like for Agony, maybe in Red Lotus, Hawk of the Fog is probably falling off now because we are getting into like old Nirvana temps.
You literally have nothing else, they are sufficient.
Witch Orbs for affixes is a great point to keep farming them, but Witch Orbs means you can just keep farming the same one that you got to triple S. Still, you never know when a new strat will come out and they're like, yeah, you just use this battle suit from 4 years ago. What do you mean you don't have her at triple S? Why don't you have her at triple S? There were people who never had Valkyrie Accipiter, you know, when the strats for the shield break with augment core off came off, you know. Yeah.
The next set of Valkyries that we can talk about are even more time gated, which are the S rank,
Okay.
strongest damage dealer before.
So I feel like with Fervent Tempo and also with Twilight Paladin, the biggest things hindering these two is just the time it takes to get them online. And the nowadays the much easier accessible DPS is like just using Carol as your physical DPS. Phoenix is also really hard to recommend because Pardo just exists. Yeah, if you have Azure Imperia, it's less important to have her. If you have Pardo online, it's less important to have her. We've had some funny meme runs with Pardo and Phoenix in the same team though. And then Lightning Empress is still the one that I'm still recommending for most
because of her
for
leader
most
skill.
players.
She is always a good option, and that pretty much does it for the Willpower Valkyries.
Okay, let's take a look at this chart. Because I feel like this chart holds up mostly well. Night Moonbeam, unfortunately, is one that has definitely moved from niche tier to Dorm Buffs tier. I feel like most new players go too fast now for Fervent Tempo, and I feel like Fervent Tempo kind of is in the niche tier for Memorial now. Yeah, that's a great point. I still feel like because she has that added value, you still need 1 to triple S for the gold witch orb farming, right? So you might as well pick one that you can take to triple S for gold witch orbs that at the very least gives you added value on an existing. Hey Mamizaki. Dude, I still haven't even done Memorial Arena yet. Sim battle though. Yeah, you need triple S to help your friends in sim battle. Oh, nice, Mamizaki. I think FT to double S still makes sense because FT is still viable as a solid psychic physical DPS. That's less rank reliant than MPE. Oh, you guys went to Hoyo Fest. Well, I guess this story time is gonna get added to the VOD because we're just cutting the entire thing and putting it on YouTube. I can see Fervent Tempo to triple S first or double S first, but I feel like I would still pick Lightning Empress before Black Nucleus. But it'll also depend on the player. I understand your position because it's definitely more about long term, like midterm performance for Abyss. But depending on the player, maybe they want to build some random battle suit that's farmable in gold witch orbs or something. I think it does make sense though for new players if all they have is like an S0 HT, right? I feel like part of the thing too is like if for some of us we have double SHT anyways. But for new players that are getting their first Hersher of Thunder, the jump from having triple S Lightning Empress for the Link skills That's a pretty noticeable. Yeah, yeah. Hersher of Thunder will be getting stamps, but realistically, well, that makes another argument in favor of gold witch orb farming. Probably is the leader skill. I don't remember too much. Healing doesn't matter. Ultimate attacks getting total damage, that matters. That's a matter. Bonus lightning damage increases to 40%. Oh, this one's kind of important. Oh, those can be maxed individually. Okay, so it is just a leader skill then. I mean, total damage is total damage. I wish you could see the previous ranks. Other than the lead. Okay, so it is just a leader skill. Well, shoot. Definitely more arguments in favor of not rushing to Triple S Lightning Empress nowadays. Still probably the one to Triple S first, though. I still think. Out of all the other ones that's on this chart, right? I still think Lightning Empress is the one definitely worth Triple S'ing. Oh, Vermilion Knight for Dorm buffs. Vermilion Knight is one thing that's not covered in this video because at the time, Vermilion Knight wasn't. Was she already in Gold Witch Orb? I feel like Vermilion Knight. Definitely Dorm buff tier, but if you're focusing on a lightning, ice, or physical team, and fire is not priority for you, and you do get around to having Vermilion Knight unlocked, Vermilion Knight might be your best F2P fire DPS in the current state of the game. Because even I-Chan's on-field damage was not that impressive on the beta, but maybe it's just because the temperatures are skewed. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you could meme with Raven DPS, but now she's just ancient willpower battlesuit. Um, I would definitely put Vermilion Knight somewhere between Dorm buffs and Consider, depending on the state of the account. Most likely just Dorm buffs here, to be honest. But situationally, maybe if you don't have Spina, you don't have Flame Scion. I think that about covers it because the rest of the video we just go back to this, right? Which is this image. You can't farm beyond triple S. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. They will warn you not to, but yes, you can. You'll see these maxed, but you can still buy. You can still buy, even if they're maxed. They'll just let you know that you already have them maxed. And then afterwards, you go into fragments, and then you click on the conversion button. Bam. Bam. Good old Flame Sakitama. Yeah, in the distant future, honestly, it might be a year and a half before you're able to afford the willpowers. Or if you play Memorial Arena a lot, you know, you might find yourself overflowing on willpowers at various points in your account. Once the month resets next week, you'll have 70 times 3, right? It's purchase up to 70 times, but it's like 3 willpower per purchase. Whatever's in that shop, you use Asterite for. That can help spike your willpower count. Anyways, I feel like we've gone on long enough. Yeah, this video surprisingly held up pretty well, going from 5.6 to 6.1. That's what, 5 patches? A lot can change in 5 patches, and a lot did change, but Keebster's foresight. That Eden slide, right? The Eden slide. We live in Universe 1. We live in Universe 1.
Then you might want to think about that patch. Lastly, of course.
Yeah, hold on. Universe 1. Eden is the next best lightning support. Time for Asuka 893. Let me take a break. We were supposed to go play World of Warcraft, but since we're still up, it's already Saturday. Let me set the stream marker. In conclusion, for those that stuck around on YouTube to watch all of this impromptu lecture, get your HOS. Everything else, just farm the farmables and ask questions from multiple sources. Get second and third opinions. Impromptu Keebster 5.6 investment review. I wouldn't say this is necessarily a reaction. It's more like a review and retrospect